I'm Zoe. I make a lot of mistakes and I read a lot. Today I'm going to talk about spring book releases. I'm going to talk about the books today in publication order. It's not the order I read them in at all, but that is how I can make this make sense in my head. So the first book I'm going to talk about is a book that has been all over Bookstagram and I think deserves the praise it's been getting. The Biography of X by Catherine Lacey from FSG Originals, I believe. Yeah, FSG. I was kindly sent a copy of this from my friend Cam, who works for the Canadian distributors of FSG. So thank you to Raincoast and thank you to Cam for sending this to me. This is a excellent book. I saw an arc of this on our shelves at the store, and I remember reading the back because it had the same cover design. It was like very lovely. I read the back and I was like, I don't know that this is for me. And I put it down and I didn't think about it again until Cam texted me, was like, oh my gosh, is this on your radar? Because it should be. And then kindly posted a copy to my work. The way this book is framed is very interesting. It is a fictional biography of a woman, X, who was a very iconic artist in this fictional world. And X has passed away very suddenly in her kind of mid-40s. And X's wife, CM, starts looking back in X's archive and kind of unearthing her past. And that's the setup of the book. It's got a legitimate title page, Biography of X by Catherine Lacey, and then a couple pages later, you get these black pages, and then the kind of fictional title page, Biography of X by C.M. Luca, who is the fictional author of the fictional book. That's a long-winded way to say that this is a very unique structure for a book. And I didn't really know what to expect going into it, and I think that was the right thing. So if you are really keen to read this book, maybe don't listen to what I'm going to say for the next little bit. But I really, really enjoyed this. 5 stars for me, 5 out of 5, knocked it out of the park. I couldn't stop thinking about it. It wormed its way into my brain, and I kind of felt like I was going crazy. And my friends who have read it also felt the same way. I haven't heard anything from readers I trust saying that this was like overblown or not worth the hype. It's a very fun book to read because there are all these little footnotes and references, and some of the things that happen in this book are real. Some of the references are real, like the books referenced, the events referenced are real. And some of them are fictionalized, and some of them are like fictionalized truth, if that makes sense. There's little like nuggets to discover. Like there'll be references to, for example, Durga Chubos, who I read her book of essays a couple years ago and really enjoyed it. But in this book, she is not an essayist, she's a journalist. So what happens when you don't take good notes? Like real people referenced in this book are like Rachel Aviv, Margaret Yourcenar, and then you get like Brian Eno being gender swapped. You also get Patrick Cottrell. Like there's a lot of very smart little references, and if you don't know who these people are, it doesn't matter. And the other thing is sometimes there will be a person and I would Google them and then they're not a real person. Lacey just made it up, which I think just made this book seem a lot more playful than maybe it actually is, because it's saying a lot of very like big important things about art and truth and what it means to lie to your partner, and is it lie, like what constitutes a lie. It's talking about the stories we tell ourselves in order to survive, The fact that I read this book a month ago and I have nothing intelligent to say about it maybe calls into question my ability to work as a bookseller. But I do recommend this book to any kind of reader. I think that this would work for your cool aunt or like a 16-year-old semi-pretentious wannabe artist. It's an excellent book. Catherine Lacey, I will be reading more from her. And this is actually one of 2 books that I'm going to talk about that was edited by Jackson Howard. So shout out Jackson for bringing the cool queer lit to all of us. The next book is The Whole Animal by Corinna Chong. This is a collection of short stories out from Arsenal. This was published this week. Yeah, just published this week. I, full disclosure, got this arc from the author Corinna. She is a local author in Kelowna, and I also worked the launch event a couple days ago, and Corinna is a wonderful person, but she's also an extremely talented short story writer. When I open a collection of short stories, I expect there to be at least a couple duds, and that was not the case for this collection. This is obviously an unfinished copy, but this is the actual cover. It's a gorgeous design. I love it. Arsenal never misses with the cover design. These stories are not interconnected. They are connected by themes, and they are legitimately short stories. I think maybe the longest story is like 20 pages, and the shortest one is 2 pages. And I appreciate that. I like legitimate short stories. The people in these stories are very often cruel and maybe unaware of their own cruelty until kind of a pivotal moment. They're also often very uncomfortable with themselves, where they find themselves in the world, who they're surrounded by, who they themselves have become. I really, really enjoyed all of these stories, frankly. They're all good. But some of my favorite ones were Love Cream Heat, Wolf Boy Saturday, and Kids in Kindergarten. Those are 3 of my favorite. And Kevin Bombardo, which was the last story, which was also one I really, really enjoyed. I don't really want to tell you anything about these, except that if you enjoy short stories and you like feeling slightly uncomfortable when you read fiction, you should read these. And Arsenal is a Canadian press, indie press. They're based in Vancouver, and I love almost everything they put out. So you should grab a copy of this. It's in paperback. It's only like $20, so no reason not to. And if you're in Kelowna, we do have signed copies. This is another book that was just published last week from Riverhead, the pretentious gals fave, Riverhead. I like Riverhead, so I'm reading myself here as well. And it is First Come Summer by Maria Hesselager. I believe, yeah, she's Danish. Marina is Danish, and this was translated by Martin Aitken, I believe, from the Danish. I picked this arc up months ago, and it was sitting on my shelf, and I saw how short it was, and I read it. Was also kind of prompted to read it because Daphne from St. Henry Books said that she had a copy, and we kind of read it together. Indistinct Viking past, pre-Christianity, coming to what I assume is Denmark. I did not love this book. I was expecting more of a punch from it. There is incest in this book. There's an uncomfortable relationship between the main character Folkvie and her older brother. That is the centerpiece of the book. It's a story about obsession and just like strange manipulation. I couldn't tell if it was supposed to be a book about female strength. Maybe I was too stupid to read this book. Who's to say? Didn't love it. I think there are more interesting dark stories and I don't know. Not for me, maybe not for you. It's okay. Anyways, that's already published as well. This was another show-stopping, glorious, beautiful 5-star read. Absolutely incredible. Tauhou by Kōtuku, Titihuia, Nuttall. I don't know if I pronounced that right, but literally an insanely beautiful book. Out from Anansi Press. Nuttall is part Maori and part Coast Salish, and this is a novel, as you can see on the cover. To me, it's more of connected vignettes, not so much short stories, but little glimpses into an imagining of what it would have been like if Vancouver Island and Aotearoa, New Zealand, were right beside each other, or not beside each other, but close enough that those peoples could have had cultural exchange. I read this book in one afternoon, and it's so beautiful. It's such a gorgeous love letter to Coast Salish cultures, to Maori cultures, to Nuttall's heritage on both sides of her family. And I really feel lucky to have read this. I really recommend it to everyone, no matter where you live, no matter if you know anything about either of these cultures. I think it's still digestible and accessible. Nuttall has included glossaries for both languages in the back for a couple words she uses, but you don't need those. You can understand the context of what is being said without them. But I really recommend this book. Go buy it. It's gorgeous. I love it. Another book that came out this week, Chrysalis by Metcalfe. I really enjoyed this book as well. I had a lot of winners recently, so that's nice. This is a book about a woman who is seeking to transform herself, as the title suggests, Chrysalis. It's told from the point of view, there's 3 parts. Each part is told from the point of view of a different character, and we never actually find out not the main character, but the central character's name, this woman who is seeking transformation. The first part is from a man who meets her at a gym and becomes obsessed with her. The second part is from the point of view of her mother, so you get some of her backstory, childhood. And the third part is from the point of view of her ex-coworker who sort of becomes obsessed with her. This book is a send-up of wellness culture, in my opinion. The central character goes through a physical transformation as well as maybe a mental one. She starts going to this gym. She transforms her body into this big, bulky, muscular thing and meditates for long portions of time, and eventually starts to emulate cutting yourself off from everyone in your life in order to achieve self-fulfillment. Bit Ayn Randian there. When I read that the author was German, I was like, oh, yep, that adds up. Our book buyer at Mosaic gave me this arc. She thought I would enjoy it. I think it was compared to Mona Awad, to Bunny, Atessa Moshfang, Night Bitch as kind of everything featuring an unlikable woman tends to be. I think this book is more like Miranda July, or maybe even like Tove Jansson. If you like The True Deceiver, you might enjoy this. Definitely made me laugh. I would recommend it if you like women who are kind of selfish and a little bit despicable. So that one was interesting. Interesting read. Very compelling. I had to get to the end. I sat down to read 20 pages one night and I ended up reading 120 pages. So definitely compelling. This beautiful, beautiful, wonderful, angelic, wise, sexy book comes out this Tuesday coming up, April 18th, I believe. Another book from Arsenal Press. If you can't tell, I love Arsenal pulp. I think they are fantastic. Look at this format, this like square paperback. I love that. Look at the cover design. They just publish such singular, beautiful, moving, incredible, incredible books. Love Arsenal. Love them so much. And this is a book I actually paid for, which is actually the only book in this whole video I can say that about. Any Other City by Hazel Plante. If you have not read Little Blue Encyclopedia for Vivian, you're a fool and you should go grab a copy however you can. That book is not from Arsenal, it's from Metcalfe, which is another incredible Canadian indie press. It was such a beautiful book. I think about that book all the time. It's very slim. It's a slim little beauty, but it's gorgeous. And this book is just as good, if not better. This is another 5-star read for me. Hazel Plante can do no wrong. She is so incredible. I have her up on a pedestal and I'm not taking her down. She just lives there now. This is another fictional memoir, but it's definitely not the same as Biography of X. It is a fictional memoir of a musician, Tracy St. Cyr, who is writing about her life. It's set in 2 parts. You get the kind of side A. I can show you in this copy. Side A, and it's got like this little record illustration, which I think is really fun, which is 1993. Tracy is a young person who has retreated to an unnamed city in Europe. I originally thought it was Amsterdam, and then by the end of the book I was like, I don't think this is Amsterdam, but it doesn't really matter. It's some city in Europe, and this young person has gone to Europe. They are in their, I think they're 22, kind of trying to become an artist, trying to figure themselves out. They end up finding community with a group of trans women, and they are very unstable in their own gender identity. They're thinking so much about their girlfriend back at home in what I can only assume is Vancouver or somewhere on the West Coast. And they're just really figuring themselves out. It's very, very beautiful. It's so intimate. That is what I love about Hazel Plante's writing. You always just feel like you are not inhabiting the body of the main character, but inhabiting the space with them. You are right there beside them. You're like holding onto their shoulder as they go through the trauma, beauty, pain of life. So that's the first part. And then the second part is Tracy St. Cyr in 2019, side B, 2019. And Tracy now has transitioned. She's living as a woman, and she has gone back to the city following a very, very traumatic, extremely traumatic breakup. And even though she is now a centered person in her own identity, she's been destabilized by this relationship, and she is reflecting on her past and how she's gotten to this point in her life. This book, I will say, is a lot more joyful than Little Blue Encyclopedia for Vivian. There's still a lot of pain. I cried, but I laughed a lot too. It's a stunning, stunning feat of writing. I read this slowly, and I think that is how you should read it. There's no chapter breaks, but there are a lot of page breaks, so it's easy to put down and pick up again. I actually can't say enough about this book. I am going to push this on everyone, so get ready for that for the rest of the spring, the summer 2023, and my life. If you are going to pick up one book I talk about, actually that's a lie. I love a lot of books in this video. I love this book. You should read it. It's so gay, it's so wise, it's so sexy. There was a sex scene in here so hot that I was reading it at work, which was a mistake. I was reading it at work and I had to put it down, and I didn't want to talk to anybody for the rest of the day because it was really, really sexy. And I was like, whoop. Anyways, gorgeous book. Out April 18th from Arsenal. Next is Just As You Are by Camille Kellogg, which comes out April 25th from Dial Press, which I think is a division of Penguin Random House. I just read this a couple days ago. It took me less than 24 hours. I absolutely hailed it. I haven't read a rom-com in a while, so this was really fun. It is a contemporary lesbian retelling of Pride and Prejudice. I am just like most of the population. I really like Pride and Prejudice. I think it's a very, very enjoyable story. I loved Bridget Jones' Diary. That was one of my favorite movies when I was an early teen. I still love it. I watch it every Christmas. It brings me so much joy. I love the Keira Knightley version of the Pride and Prejudice film. I think it's, again, an extremely enjoyable watch. It's so beautiful. Will make you cry, you laugh, you get everything from it. And then more recently, I absolutely loved Fire Island, which came out last year or the year before. The film by Joel Kim. So funny. If you haven't seen it, it's on Disney Plus in Canada. So it's nice to get a queer femme retelling of Pride and Prejudice, because I don't believe I've seen that. And Kellogg really, you could tell, loves the story. She is a kids book editor, I believe. I don't know if she works for Penguin Random House, but she's an editor. And I always find that you can tell when a author has been an editor. There's something about the pacing. It's just more tight. It's more together. And I felt that with this book. So instead of the Bennets being sisters, you have them as 4 roommates: Liz, Jane, Katie, and Lydia. And they work at the Netherfields, which is a queer, woman-centered, non-binary centered magazine run by Charlotte. And it is a failing enterprise, and it is purchased by 2 rich lesbians, Bailey instead of Bingley, and Daria instead of Darcy. And literally the rest is history. You know exactly what this is going to be about. You know the twists and turns, but that doesn't matter. I still had a great time reading this. I will say that I would like one retelling of Pride and Prejudice where Lydia is not the, grody, kind of pathetic, desperate, shallow person character. I really like Lydia. That might be because I feel like maybe I am a Lydia of the Bennets. I don't think I'm definitely not Jane. I don't think I'm Liz. I hope I'm not Mary. Anyways, that's just a personal gripe with Pride and Prejudice retellings, is that I would like Lydia to maybe find some space for herself, Anyways, great book. Really enjoyable. I had a great time reading this. And if you like sapphic stuff, you'll probably like this too. It was really fun. This was a hugely anticipated novel for me for 2023. One of my most anticipated reads of the year. Dykette by Jenny Fran Davis. I begged for this arc, so I had to read it, even though my friend Ken actually DNF'd it after about a quarter of the way through the book. And when I saw that on Storygraph, I was very sad because this book just sounded so ridiculous and fun. So I still made myself pick it up. and read it. And I will admit that the first 20 to 40 pages, I had a jerky ride with it. It wasn't paced well. It seemed like some scenes had maybe been grabbed from early in the book and then just inserted without a lot of context. I obviously was reading an advanced copy, and I try to be generous when books are not finished, because I know that they do change things around and things get edited better, and there are improvements made sometimes. So I don't know if that'll be in the finished copy. And after pushing through that, I really did enjoy my reading experience. This book follows a group of 6 queers during the holidays, I think Christmas Eve until New Year's Day-ish, in a holiday home in Hudson, upstate New York. And it is chaotic. I grew up reading really kind of trashy series like the A-List, the Clique, the Lukes, if you know what I'm talking about. You know, I see you. If you don't know what I'm talking about, good for you. You probably have a more well-formed brain than I do. But this gave me the same, like, kind of intense hate-love relationship. I had that same feeling for these characters. The main character is Sasha. She is a high femme, very neurotic, mid-20 something queer lesbian, who has a huge inferiority complex. The girl cannot stop comparing herself to others. That is her, like, defining characteristic, is that she lives in comparison to other people. She is dating Jesse, who uses a myriad of pronouns and is quite butch, and also is a mid-20 something. And then Jesse's best friend, I'm going to forget their name, Lou, who is non-binary and is very, like, hip, runs their own business, and is in their late 20s. And then Lou is dating Darcy, who is an it queer, you know, verified on Instagram with about 10,000 followers, like, dresses, everything looks good on her because she's thin and has, like, vaguely European roots. And then the other couple in this book is Jules and Miranda. Jules is kind of like Anderson Cooper if Anderson Cooper was a lesbian, and slightly younger. And then Miranda is a psychotherapist. Yeah. And so these 6 queers are all at this home, and it's just a lot. It's so much, like, jealousy and misplaced emotions, and Sasha being unable to communicate with anybody about what she wants, and really not understanding her own desires at all. And yeah, this is a really fun book. I don't think it's for everyone. I think if a straight person picked up this book, they wouldn't know what the fuck they were reading for a certain portion of it. The other thing about this book is that the characters are all very privileged. Like, they all live in New York, and there's no discussion of money, except for Sasha kind of deriding other people for having, like, old money, where she is from, like, a newly upper middle class family, but she grew up, like, with money in New Jersey. So that's why it reminded me of, like, the A-List or the Clique, kind of these very, very insular communities of very, very privileged people all picking at each other, when really, as an outsider, you're like, all of you have everything you could possibly need in the world. Why are you all tearing each other down? But obviously they're bored. So yeah, I had a good time reading this. Are they all terrible people? Sure. But, you know, that's okay. It is what it is. I had a fun time. The next book, I don't have my copy of it because somebody else is reading it right now, but maybe I will put a picture there if I can figure out how. It's coming out May 16th, same as Dykette. The guest follows the main character, who I'm going to forget her name. I need to be better at keeping notes. Okay, so the guest follows Alex, who's our main character, who has just arrived in the east end of Long Island. I thought it was the Hamptons. Clearly, I don't know anything about New York. Farthest east I have been is Toronto, so don't come for me. But she's in a very privileged New York summer area, and she has gone there with the older man she is seeing. Alex, I believe, is like 21. She's quite young, 22, 23. She has gotten by in her life kind of as a grifter, low-key, scammy. I'm not talking like Carolyn Calloway or Anna Delvey level scams, but she definitely leverages her youth, her beauty, her brains to get what she wants from wealthy men. She's lived as a sugar baby come escort for the past few years of her life, getting by in New York City by burning bridge after bridge with her friends who are just other young people in similar circumstances. She doesn't want to work. She doesn't think she should have to work. And the world around her is sort of telling her the same thing because she's beautiful and has enough brains to manipulate others into getting what she wants. She is now in this neighborhood in Long Island, and she's taking the train there. She's staying there with her lover. Something goes wrong, and she is no longer welcome at his house. She also is dealing with calls from somebody from her past who is threatening her. You're not really sure why. So the setup is it takes place over just a few days at the end of summer in this very niche, insular, is there a theme here? Community. I ate this up. It stressed me out so much. I read this in December. Everybody at work had to hear me talk about how much I was stressed about this book. It made me sweat a lot. Nervous sweats. Books that give you nervous sweat. You know, nothing hits like that. They're like a few of the books I have talked about today. These characters are really gross. Not just Alex, but kind of everyone she comes in contact with. They're, for the most part, quite wealthy, privileged people, and they don't really think about the way their actions affect anyone around them. Alex is also like that. She's not a sympathetic person. There are parts where you're thinking, oh, this person is in such a terrible situation, but then you're like, as a reader, you reflect that she has put herself here to some extent. You never really get everything about her past, but frankly, you don't need to. The things that stick in my head from this book, and I read it in December, so that's a long time ago for me. I have short-term memory. That's all I ever remember. But the things that I remember are the scenes where she is like so desperately trying to find her next gain. Not grift, her next gain, the next thing she can get out of life. The things that she feels she is owed. Yeah, very interesting book. I do think the Hawk Girlies will be reading The Guest this summer. Pretty sure it's coming out in hardcover, and I don't think that'll deter them because it's a really gorgeous cover. Emma Cline already had a hit in the past, and I really think they're going to be pushing the shit out of this. Anything that comes out in May, you can expect that. So, yeah, fun book. Fun book to read. Really good, I think would be an excellent summer read. So, look for that one when it comes out. The next book that I'm going to talk about is really, really special to me for a lot of reasons. It's The Adult by Bronwyn Fischer. Look at that cover. Isn't she gorgeous? I am entranced. Excellent cover design. This book is coming out May 23rd from Penguin Random House. I was very kindly sent this arc. Most of the arcs that I get, if I have like shown an arc today, it's because I got it at work. This arc was sent to me by my friend Sarah Jackson, who is an editor and a writer with Penguin. She edited this book and she asked me if she could send me a copy, and I said yes, of course. If you haven't read Sarah's book, you're a fool. Anyways, Sarah edited this. She sent me a copy. This arc mail that came to my house, which is exciting for me. And I read this back in December while I was on vacation, and I am actually going to reread this before it gets published. That's how much I liked this. I don't reread a lot these days. I just don't have time for it. But this book was so fucking good. Bronwyn, wow, what an incredible talent. I am in awe. I'm pretty sure Bronwyn is like 2 or 3 years older than me, and that freaks me out a little bit. But also, good for you. Slay. The Adult is a queer coming-of-age Canadian book. We love Canlit around here. It follows Natalie. She's 18. She's just arrived in Toronto to start attending U of T. She is from a very small town in Northern Ontario, and she is a very lonely person. She's grown up single child of her 2 parents, and she grew up with not a lot of company. She doesn't make friends easily. She doesn't really understand how other people make friends. She doesn't understand how people form bonds, and she's a very, very profoundly lonely and alone person. While Natalie is working on a school project for her poetry class, she is approached by a woman in a park, and she is confused by that, and their relationship is the driving force of the book. Reading this book was very disorienting for me. Natalie is 18. She's in this new situation, very unfamiliar to her. She doesn't understand what's going on around her most of the time. When I was 19, I moved to a very, very foreign, strange place. For me, I felt very confused. I had an empty head most of the time, same as Natalie. And even in my notes in this book, there were instances where Natalie was sitting in a park or walking down a street, and I know it's set in Toronto, but I was picturing myself in Warsaw. And to be like physically taken out of my 25-year-old self and like thrown right back into 6 years ago, extremely disorienting. Bronwyn is an incredible writer to have accomplished that. So beautiful. This is like one of my favorite books I have ever read. And I read a lot. I read a lot of books. I'm surrounded by books constantly. Absolutely blown away by this. Queer coming of age like no other. And I am so excited for people to pick this book up. I'm so excited to push this on people. I cannot wait until it publishes. Just an absolutely beautiful, 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 stunning Stenosha book. Out May 23rd. Another book out May 23rd is The Late Americans by Brandon Taylor. I am a Brandon Taylor girly. I read Real Life and I was like slapped across the face by its brilliance. I read Filthy Animals, his short story collection. Loved the shit out of that book as well. And I begged for an arc of this, and our buyer very kindly got me one. And I read this back in December. I actually usually try not to read books so far in advance of publication date, because it is very hard for me as a self-proclaimed short-term memory girly to be able to then remember what the fuck they were about and recommend them, which is my job as a bookseller. Brandon Taylor's writing, if you haven't read it, there's like nothing like it. The man, oh, what a, it's just so good. Ooh, I don't know how to say it. I don't know how to describe it. I love him. He's so cool. A little bit insufferable, you know, but I love him. I will say, I think this is more, it's not short stories. I guess it does say a novel on it. But you get different POVs. There are writers in here. There are artists, dancers. There are also laborers, day laborers, regular working class folk. It's set in Iowa City, which is a university town. If you know what the Iowa Writers Workshop is, then you probably are just as much of a loser as I am. Brandon Taylor attended the Iowa Writers Workshop, as did like Carmen Maria Machado and probably every other one of your favorite writers. This is a book about late stage capitalism and suffering and classism and racism, sexism, homophobia. Yeah, Brandon Taylor knows how to write suffering. You know, and I'm not talking about like Hanya Yanagihara suffering where you're like, okay, I get it, girl. Life is pain. Brandon writes like real suffering. I don't know. I like can't be objective about him. I loved this book. And if that makes me a pretentious piece of garbage, then so be it. I actually never know how to sell Brandon Taylor to people because I don't want to just like pass off trauma in a book, and I often feel like that is what I am doing. I did have to talk somebody out of buying Real Life a few years ago, because if you've read that book, you know that there is a very, very descriptive scene of rape, and the customer in question did not want triggering stuff, and I had to be like, maybe that is not the book for you, girl. And I stand by that decision. You know what? You don't have to read every book. You really don't. Just because other people like it. I know I'm literally telling you to read books right now, but you don't have to read every book. I never finished A Little Life, and I never will. I won't. Not for me. I don't know what I'm talking about anymore. I've clearly been talking to my phone for far too long. But I enjoyed this book, and I will read literally anything Brandon Taylor writes. That's just me. This is A Bit Much by my friend Sarah Jackson. This book is actually already out. The hardcover came out last year in June 7th. The paperback is coming out June 6th, 2023. Wow, can't believe that's the year we're living in, but I guess it's true. Look at this gorgeous cover. Another beautiful Stenosha cover. Mine is a ARC, so it's a bit weirdly saturated. Your finished copy will be much prettier. I read this last February. I read it in one night, and it left me sobbing on my parents' couch, feeling emotionally drained. If that's what you seek in books, then this is a book for you. All seriousness, this is a book about a 24-year-old young woman in Toronto. She is very unsure about her life. She doesn't know what she has chosen. She's unsure how she stumbled into the life she's leading. She has like little to no experience with romantic relationships. Her most meaningful relationship is with her best friend, who is very, very ill and possibly dying. So this book is actually much more about friendship than it is about romantic relationships. It's about Alice finding who she is, not defining herself in relation to other people. and coming to terms with losing this very, very important relationship in her life because of circumstances outside of her control. My blurb for this was, it's like if Jenny Awful wrote for narcissistic, neurotic 20-somethings. The main character is Chaz from the Royal Tenenbaums meets Otessa Moshfang's Sleeper meets Claire from Fleabag minus the ambition. Does that not make you want to read this? If it doesn't, you need to reevaluate your life, because that's an excellent blurb. I love this book. You should go buy it in hardcover right now if you feel so inclined, but also you can wait until June 6th and get a cute little paperback, or you can get it from the library. Do whatever you want, but read this. Made me cry, made me laugh, gave me everything. Sarah's also a wonderful person, so there's that. You're supporting a good person. Yes, out in paperback, June 6th. You love to see it. The last book I'm going to talk about today is also edited by Jackson Howard, just like the first book I talked about. It is also coming from FSG, just like the first book I talked about. It is Open Throat by Henry Hoke. I am an ecology girly. I have a biology degree and I've worked in ecological fields. I love ecology, I love ecosystems and nature, and I'm a nerd. So when I saw the premise of this book was queer mountain lion narrative, I grabbed this art with my grubby little scavenger paws and squirreled it away. And then I actually immediately read it, which is not how I usually consume works. Usually they stay in a little stack right over there until I finally get around to them. Not so this book. I read it in 2 days. And I had a really interesting reading experience. It's a very singular book. I've never read a book like this, so there you go. Good job, Henry, for being original. The narrator is quite literally a mountain lion, and they are definitely queer. This is a queer-ass book. Don't let anybody tell you differently. That's why it's being published Pride Month. June 6th. This mountain lion is so human, but also doesn't feel anthropomorphized, if that makes sense. I don't feel like I'm reading like a furry version of a mountain lion. Like, this is an animal with human characteristics, which is literally the definition of anthropomorphizing. I'm eating my own words here. I don't know how to describe this. It's a really emotional, moving book while dealing with a lot of like shallow people. I'm not explaining it well. Our liony protagonist is based on a real mountain lion, P22, who was actually just put down at the end of December of last year, 2022. I believe he was 13 years old, which is kind of like a regular age for a mountain lion. He was a very iconic animal. There's a really, if you Google P22, you'll see pictures. A very, very iconic photograph of him under the Hollywood sign. He lived in the Hollywood Hills, and he was very notable because he lived in a space that was only about a quarter of the size of what a regular adult male mountain lion would live in as territory. This mountain lion understands human speech to some extent. They deal with also natural and unnatural threats. It's a really interesting book. I have seen the girlies going crazy for this on Bookstagram. I think that the hype is deserved. I think it's, like I said, it's a very unique narrative structure. I would say if the premise sounds intriguing to you, Queer Mountain Lion, take a chance. Maybe get it from the library. Or you can borrow my copy if you're my pal. But I definitely, I did enjoy this. I felt very compelled by it. It's a very interesting, original book. So that's all the books I wanted to talk about. I feel like I talked a lot and I'm gonna have to edit this and be like, Zoe, what the fuck? Be more concise. But I do love to talk about books, and I know that I do that for my job, and I also do it with my friends, but why should I not talk about books for every waking hour of my life? Tell me what you're reading. I'm nosy. I love to know what people are reading. And yeah, I hope that you found something interesting in here. I like to think I read widely. I know all of this was fiction. I don't read a lot of nonfiction. I'm not a nonfiction girly. But yeah, most of those books were pretty gay. It's what I read. Maybe in the future I will make a video on summer releases. There's a lot of great books coming out. I know 2 of the books I talked about are coming out in June, but that's early June. And I have a lot of books that I'm excited about that are coming out July and September. September I still like to think of as summer because I live in delusion. See you later. I hope you are having a great spring, and I hope that you see lots of flowers and birds, as long as you're not scared of them. And I hope that you get some sunshine, and hopefully here in the Okanagan we get some rain, because I'm not trying to live that forest fire life this summer. We don't need that. Guys, bye.